Okay, so today's lesson is about the real number system. In math, there are two types of numbers. There are real numbers and there are imaginary numbers. We don't deal with imaginary numbers in 8th grade, so I'm going to teach you about all the different types of real numbers that exist. So remember, you're doing this on paper like the previous slide showed, but I'm doing my notes like this, so it'll look a little bit different than what you're writing down. But you're copying these definitions onto your paper. So real numbers are made up of two types of numbers: rational and irrational numbers. Okay, so we have the big category of real numbers. Underneath that, there are two categories. They can be rational numbers or irrational numbers. So first, I'm going to tell you what an irrational number is. An irrational number cannot be written as a fraction. It is impossible. Cannot be written as a fraction. So it's going to be a decimal number, but as a decimal, it never terminates, which means stops, so it's never going to stop, or repeat. It never terminates, it never repeats. So examples, I'll put this in a different color. Examples of irrational numbers are, so for example, pi. This is the symbol, but the reason pi is irrational is because it is a decimal, 3.1415. I'm putting the ellipses to let you know it just keeps going and going and going. It's going to be different numbers, there's no pattern, and it never stops. Okay? Another example would be the square root of 2. That is a decimal number that is going to keep going. It's in between the number 1 and the number 2, but as a decimal, it just keeps going. It never stops. There's no pattern. The square root of 5 is another example. The square root of 11. So most square roots, if they don't reduce to a whole number, they are irrational. The second set of numbers, and I messed up here. Let me change this to blue. It should just say rational. Sorry about that. So the next set of numbers are rational numbers. Now, a rational number can be written as a fraction. So if you see a fraction, it's rational. Or if you can turn a number into a fraction, it's rational. And then if you want to write it as a decimal, it will terminate, which means it will stop, or it will, repeat. So rational can be a fraction. As a decimal, it will terminate or it will repeat. So what am I talking about? So say I have the number -1/2. That is a fraction, so it's rational. That's simple. Or say I have the number 6. If I wanted to, I could write 6 as 6/1. I could write it as 6.0. That's a decimal that stops. I could write it as 12/2. So those are all numbers that reduce down to 6. So it is rational. I can write 4 3/10. That is a decimal that terminates. It stops right here. Or I could write 4.333, and it keeps repeating. Just the 3 repeats. So even though it's going on forever, like these irrational ones, it's a repeating pattern. So if there's a pattern, that makes it rational. That's the main difference between irrational and rational numbers. I'm going to pause here check your understanding really quickly. Then we'll have another video for the second set of numbers that belong to the real number system.